and get excited for final exams for your students. How many of you are first-time parents of high schoolers? Fantastic, great. So today, hopefully, will be a time to kind of take the fear out of finals for you as parents as well for your child. You had 2 handouts when you came in. Some of you might not have received it, so we're making some more copies. So you should have one that looks like a calendar, and that is double-sided. It has a calendar on one side, and then kind of a handy action plan side on the other. And then there is another one that says DHS final exams on the top and kind of gives some information that we'll largely talk about today. And this is information for you as well as for your student. And we'll get into a little bit more about what your child is also receiving in school. So today we're going to talk about the details of finals. We're going to talk about studying, supporting your student, and other resources for both you and your student. So when we think about our own final exam experiences, or even where our children are at right now, this might come to mind. Kind of a student who is a little bit overwhelmed and falling asleep while they're studying. So while you might see this a little bit, we're hoping that we're going to take away this portion of it and kind of take away some of that anxiety and fear from our students as they're preparing for their finals, as well as for you. So about the finals, if you take a look at that handout where it has the calendar, you have a nice, lovely reminder about when the final exams are taking place. So on Tuesday, the 17th, periods 1 through 3 will have finals. Wednesday, periods 4 through 6, and Thursday, periods 7 through 8. Now, if you take a look at the calendar, there's also an area that for conflicts. So if there is an issue with the exams, your student could have an exam during the conflict. So for some reason, whether your child has accommodations or you feel as though they shouldn't have 3 exams during one day, you can actually opt to have your child take an exam during the conflict period. So that's why that's listed there. Or for whatever reason, your child is sick on one of those days, there is time that is set aside for your child to take an exam during the period. If you take a look at that calendar as well, you'll see that the exams are scheduled from 8:10 to 9:25 for the first exam. And then if you take a look at the next exam, it's not scheduled until 10:40. So if your child has accommodations, they need to take a little bit longer for that test. That period of time allows students to have that time to be able to take it. So your child might have extra time, and that first test will actually go from 8:10 to 10:40 potentially. Otherwise, at 9:25 from 10:40, your child will have a significant amount of time between their first period and second period test. So this is time for your child to be able to get a snack, to be able to use the restroom, potentially review before the next test, and have that kind of downtime before their next one. In addition to that, your child might not actually have a final for all of their classes. So not all teachers give a final for their classes. So PE, for example, may not have a final exam. So your child would not have a test during that period. Or a teacher may decide that they're going to have a project due instead, and that project might just be due during that final time, but they don't actually have to come into the class. So they would just have to submit it before that time or come in to submit it. And other teachers just don't have a final exam at all. That might be something that is common for teachers, especially that do standards-based grading. They don't have a final, especially for their year-long class. That being said, your student does not have to be at school if they don't have a final during that period. And because of that, the buses will run the entire day. The bus schedule should be coming up today. We are waiting for transportation for that schedule, but that bus schedule we're hoping will be sent out to you as well as put on the website, hopefully by today. And usually what happens is that the bus will be there about a half an hour before and about a half an hour afterwards. keeping in mind that we do have students that might have accommodations, so that bus will not come at, say, 9:25. It wouldn't come until around 10:40. So we'll be looking at the bus schedule to see what works out for your child in regards to what their final exam schedule is to go to school and return home. So that's kind of a portion, I guess, on your side and your child's to kind of figure out what that looks like, or depending upon if you can pick up your child. You would have to have that communication with your child if you're going to pick them up. Certainly, you know, texting, emailing, whatever the case is, or just figuring out beforehand what time you would pick them up at. Your child would be released from their period at the time that it's listed here unless they have accommodations, and they are free to go at that point. I think that there was a question in the back. Did you have a question at all?
Yeah, so if they are done, if they like don't have a third period, for example, then they are free to go after
Yes.
that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just they tell you that you're leaving, or you just leave?
They just leave. Yeah. So based upon the student schedule, what we do at the schools, we have a list of who is giving and who is not giving tests. So the teachers will be taking attendance for those classes where they do have a final. If they don't have a final, they're essentially exempt for attendance that period. And certainly students are welcome to stay in the school. We do have specific locations that are available for those students. Our cafeteria is open the entire day. The cafeteria has limited food. We just don't have hot food on finals days. We have cold food. So there'll be sandwiches and chips and other types of snacks, drinks, but there won't be like a pasta bar for the students. So there will be a little bit of a limited selection. However, there will still be enough food that they can have a substantial lunch or snack if that is the case. The library is also open the entire school day. The library is actually a quiet zone during final exams. If you have been in the school during a normal school day, the library is not a quiet area. It is more of a loud and vibrant area. So depending upon what your student has experienced in the past, I think that's a nice conversation about the library being a quiet space, whereas maybe the cafeteria is a place for having a snack, meeting with friends, kind of just relaxing a little bit and being able to talk and whatnot in that space. In regards to what to bring or not to bring to finals, I think some of the common sense things would be that you bring a pen and pencil, and that you are going to have an eraser for your pencil if you need to erase. If you're taking a math test, a calculator, assumably that the teacher would be telling the students if they aren't able to use a specific type of calculator, but they've been taking tests over this semester, so they should be familiar with what type of calculator they should use. I know that most teachers also have extra calculators on hand. I know that sometimes during finals we can get a little bit nervous about, okay, do we have extra batteries for the calculator? What if it dies? What would happen? Do we have to have two calculators? The teachers do have extra calculators available, and oftentimes the teachers will just ask for an ID or something where they can return that calculator at the end of the period. Some teachers may require students to bring their Chromebooks, but I think it's important for students to know that they might not be able to use them during that period. So the student will have the entire period to take the final, but I think it's important for the students to know that afterwards, once they're done with the test, they might not be able to pull out that computer if there's time remaining in the class period. Most teachers have a no electronic device kind of rule during that time period for security purposes, making sure that there isn't a picture taken of the test or anything like that. So students really should be mindful about that and bringing things that they can do, whether it be reading a book, having a notebook or notes that they can study from that's not on their computer. It might be a crossword puzzle, a quiet game that they can do that's not causing any type of disturbance. So it's really up to your student what they want to do during that time. Obviously, if they have exams coming up, they might decide that they would like to study during that time, keeping in mind that they still have a substantial amount of time between their first test and their second test, depending upon if they have accommodations or not.
Once they finish their exam, if there's time still left, are they able to get up and leave the classroom, or?
It really depends on the teacher. So some teachers want the students to stay in the class until the end of the period. So let's say from 8:10 to 9:25, so there isn't a disturbance of getting up and moving. At 9:25, if they don't have accommodations, most teachers will then have those students leave. There are other teachers where if you're done, you can leave. And so that's a conversation that most of the teachers are having with their students at this time. But if there is a question, the student can always ask.
So they're taking paper exams?
For the most part, and that's why I say it really is teacher dependent for some of these tests. There may be a class where they do their test on a computer depending upon what that class is. And part of this period of time is that the teachers should be talking to their students about what type of tests they'll be giving and what type of format it will be. So it should be something, and that's, we'll get into it in a second about planning, but there is on the back of the calendar, for every single period, students will be able to write on this, or any other, whether they have a planner that they want to use, or just jotting it down on a piece of paper or in their computers, about what the format of that test will look like. So some students, yes, they might have it on their computer. Other students, they might be doing an essay test where they're just going to write the entire time. Other students might have a multiple choice test. It really just depends on what that class is.
The kids are getting this calendar like in their advisories and they're going through class by class with them.
So yes, for advisories, right now I've been going into a lot of advisories. I should be done with them by the end of this week. Every single freshman advisory I'm going into this week to kind of talk about how the semester has gone, and every single one that I've walked into, they're studying for finals. The senior teachers in those classes are also talking about their experience with finals and what to expect. So students do have a schedule. They will be going through with their teachers about whether they have an exam or not, what it's going to look like, what day, what period. They have received an email about the schedule as well, but we'll be sending a reminder one as well because we know that you're not necessarily looking at emails. But there will be a reminder, obviously, from the teachers about what it's going to look like, especially for those classes where they don't have a final. So what should they expect? And that was one of the questions that a student asked me the other day is, do I have to stay? And you know, we don't announce that you don't have to stay, but you can leave when you're done, and that teachers are saying that to the students as well. So that's kind of what they can expect. Free periods, you know, this is something where, let's say that they have a first period test and then they have a third period test. There is a substantial amount of time that's between those tests. The first test is done at 9:25. The third period test starts at 1:10. That's a decision that you were able to make as a parent or have a conversation with your student about if you want them to stay at school during that period of time or if you are allowing them to come home during that period of time. Obviously, the school is open to students to be able to use the library, to be in the cafeteria. We try to keep students out of the hallways to ensure that we do have quiet areas for students when they're taking tests, especially if we have accommodations during that time between. Our perk, our weight room is also available. So if you have a student who works out, who wants to get a workout in during the day, they're also able to go there. We have a teacher who's in there during that period of time. So if they want to go lift some weights or have a little workout in, they can do that as well. So that's kind of the structure of what the day looks like. Are there any questions about the structure of the finals at all in regards to days, periods, where students can go, schedules?
A double period class like with a lab, does that final take place in the first period?
Yes, except for early bird. So if you have an early bird 1 class, it would take place during first period. Otherwise, yes, it's taking place during that the first period of that. And the teacher will also specify that with the students as well about what that looks like and how that kind of translates into whether they're going to, they're not going to stay obviously for a 5 period amount of time, 5 hour period of time, but the teacher will specify what that looks like and kind of the format of that test and that they can go home during the second part.
I was just wondering what time they can start arriving.
building where they won't be turned away by security? Is that 7:30, 7:45, just so that I know?
So, as normal, the doors open at 7 a.m. So they can come in at that point, and they're able to go into the cafeteria, the library, and use that space at that time.
And then one other thing, for another student that isn't in the high school yet, but for accommodations, like if they go till 10:40,
Yeah.
and the next final is at 10:40, and I mean, would they ever have that back-to-back, or would, because of their situation, they ever never have
They
two
could
finals in a row?
They could potentially have 2 in a row, and that's why we have that conflict period that's available. So that's a
Okay.
conversation for the student parent to have with either the case manager or the teachers, because we don't want our students to be overwhelmed, because that's a lot of time to do that. So absolutely having that conversation with the teachers, and if there are multiple conflicts like that, then obviously we would work with the student to make sure that there is more flexibility in how we're managing those finals with
Okay.
the students.
Thank you.
Do you have any extra schedules of the,
Look at this, you edit that we have more than one made up there as well. So we're gonna go back to that schedule in just a second. So the biggest thing for our students right now is, how do you study for finals? I think that is the largest portion of the anxiety and the fear that our students have. Many of our students who are taking finals, their tests will usually range anywhere from 10 to 20% of their grade. That seems like a lot, but remember, it's 10 to 20%, so 80 to 90% of their grade has already been established. So although it is a larger portion, it also isn't going to drop their grade from an A to an F. It has the potential of lowering it a grade. However, it is important that students know that they are not going to fail if they have an A or a B already, even a C. And so I think that takes the fear away a little bit, that yes, you need to do well, but it's not going to be the end of the world. So we are really encouraging our students, again, in advisory right now, our advisory teachers, the senior teachers are talking to students about how they can begin to study, and that is starting to study right now. We don't want our students to cram the night before, because that is a lot of information to cram into their heads. So we want them to start right now, and one of those ways to do it is to develop a schedule, especially being their first time taking finals. It's sometimes good to really just schedule out an afternoon about what it's going to look like. And that's not just study. For some students, that means you have to write in, you're going to have dinner from 6 to 6:30, then you're going to study, then you're going to take a break for 15 minutes so you can play with your iPhone or your smartphone, you can play a video game, you can watch TV. And I think it's important that we put a little bit of normalcy into their evenings, because otherwise they really are going to be bogged down in stress. So something that our senior advisory students are talking to our freshmen about is that you can reward yourself. You're going to put in some work right now, but you can have a reward. No, you're not going to be able to play video games the entire night, but if you do your studying, you can build in a half an hour of video games, or whatever the case might be. I have heard a lot of great suggestions about cell phones, and that is having a common place where everybody in the family charges their cell phones, so you know that they're not on it when they're studying, or that you know that they're getting good sleep at night. So maybe everybody has to plug their phone in downstairs before they go up to bed, so you know that they're studying, or that they're not on it when you want them to try to sleep. Now obviously they might have other ways to do other things, but I do think it's important that they also realize that the cell phone can get in the way of that valuable time that can be used for studying. So a recommendation we make to students is to just put a few minutes aside every night for each of the classes that they have a final in. So maybe they have 15 minutes every night that they're working on their classes. It's also important to keep in mind that some of our classes are also still giving work. So it's having to separate what they have to do right now in class as well as what they need to study. And so a way to do that is to kind of break down what they've been doing so far in their classes, what they've been doing well in, and what they need a little bit of work. So taking a look at the exam scores that they've gotten in specific units. If they're able to go back, look at those units and say, you know, I really didn't do well in Unit 2 exam, I know that I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that. Ultimately, students will need to go over at first just to review the material so they can jot down, you know, I really didn't understand this concept. It works really well with math problems because they can do some problems and see if they can do them. If they aren't able to do them, they know they need to spend some more time on those. And the great thing about math is that it builds on itself. And so they can quickly review what they need to work on with math. For English, they can review different books that they had to read, some of the reports that they had to do. So looking at past material is really important for students to, number one, identify areas that they need to study in. I think that sometimes our students are so overwhelmed because they think that they have to memorize every single piece of information from every single unit and every single class. So if they can review everything very quickly and say, these are the areas that I need to work on, it provides them with a guide that those are the areas that they need to focus on when they're studying. And so the calendar that you have on the back, it provides a way for students in every single one of their periods to ask their teachers or to jot down what the task format is going to look like. So they can put on there no final for a test, or they can say that they're going to have an essay test, or they're going to have multiple choice tests. We'll get to it a little bit about what that's going to look like for test taking, but there are specific areas that they might want to kind of focus their study on depending upon the test type. The next area is going to be testing what they need to look at. So this, on the back of the calendar, the chart also provides students with opportunities to identify what they have to help them study. So they might already have note cards, or maybe all of their notes are on their Chromebook, or maybe they have past essays that they had to write. This way, they have everything on a sheet of paper, they have everything jotted down to help them organize how they're even going to study. And then the last part is that test taking strategies. So how they're actually going to accomplish this. I think this one's important in regards to just, they've already established maybe how many minutes that they're going to study. So I'm going to study 15 minutes in English by looking at my notes. It's also, depending upon your student, thinking about where they're going to study, who they're going to study with. Some students do better when they're studying alone, others work better in a group. If they're working in a group, I think it's important of having that conversation. What does it look like when you're studying in a group? Are you actually studying, or are you talking about what happened in school today? And that's okay if they do that a little bit, but having that conversation that this is actually a study time, that you need to go over this material. And depending upon what their strengths and weaknesses are, they need to make sure that if they're working in a group, that they're able to cover the material that they need to study as well. I do think it's great for students to be able to work with a peer or a group because they can kind of quiz each other. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So it's nice to be able to have somebody else that they can work with. You as a parent, I don't want to put that on you, but they might be reaching out to you on, to help them, quiz themselves on some of those things to study for as well. In addition, it might be where they're going to study. So they might want to be at the Deerfield library. They might want to be at the high school library. They might just want to be in their room. And I think it's important of making sure that in those spaces that they do have a quiet area that they're able to either sit at a desk or sit in an area where it's going to be useful time and place to do that studying. Sometimes students want to do studying in their room, but they have a TV, they have their computer, they have their music. Some of those things might be fine if your student is used to that, but it might be important to kind of look at where that space is so they have a place that is going to be conducive to their study. One of the items I put up here is ARC Tutor. So we do have a location in the school called the ARC, and it is a location where students can go to get individualized help with a tutor. And depending upon how many people are in there or what type of help the student needs, it might be individualized help or it might be group work together. So students can go there after school. There are different teachers there that are for different subject areas. So if they need to go in there for math or they need to go in there for humanities, there's someone there that can help them out. In addition to the art tutor, some teachers may also have availability during the school day or after school for students to come see their own individual teachers for help as well. So it's important for students to ask the teacher if they need help, if they are available, or if they're not available, then they do have the ARC that's available to the students. And the students do know where that's at. They're having that conversation in advisory as well, that this is an option that many students use. And something that I always reinforce with students is that great students go to help, get help. It doesn't mean that you're not smart or that you aren't good enough. It means that you want to do better. It doesn't matter how much information you do or do not know. Going to get help from the ARC or a teacher is always beneficial to you. And that our senior advisory teachers are helping our students with that. They don't want to hear it from us. They want to hear it from other students. So if another student says it's okay to do, they're a little bit more apt to do it themselves. So that is available for our students if you need that extra help. The next part in regards to discussing, studying, and reviewing test-taking tips, this sheet with the final exams 2016-17, there's some good information here. It kind of summarizes what I've been talking about for planning for finals. So my recommendation is just having that conversation with your child about how they're going to study for finals, and if they've had conversations yet in advisory or with their individual subject area teachers. And they want to be able to start planning for that studying right now. The night before and day of finals is good information to have. I do have that coming up, but in regards to the night before, again, we don't want our students to cram. The night before, they really should have been studying up until this point. And so the night before really is just a review of, okay, this is information that I need to know. Maybe there is a specific area that they really want to hone in on. But the night before really should be a time where getting settled in, they're going to have a nice dinner, they're going to study just a little bit, and then they're going to get some sleep. And I don't put a set amount of time. We want our students to get 9. We know they don't get it, but we just encourage them to get a nice night of sleep. In the morning, encouraging them to eat breakfast. A lot of students don't want to eat breakfast, but whether it's a granola bar or an apple, whatever the case might be, we want them to have a little bit in their stomach and have a snack even that's available that they can have afterwards or right beforehand is also a great option as well. Students also might want to bring in a water. Don't want to encourage them to have soft drinks or energy drinks or coffee, but they might bring it, and that's okay. We want them to be feeling comfortable and calm when they're going into that test. I put in here what to bring again, so there's a reminder there about what they should bring. And then looking ahead to, on that day, what they're going to do next. So there's a lot of angst up until that test point, and then what's going to happen afterwards. So now they're done with their test, and they can go and relax a little bit or prepare for the next test. In regards to the next part, this is great information to go over with your student about general test-taking tips and tips for different test formats. I think the biggest thing for our students is helping them to calm themselves when they get into a test, just looking over the test when they get it so they know what they're going to come into. Many teachers, when they hand out a test, are going to go over it anyway to say, okay, you're going to start with multiple choice and you have some short answer and essay. Your students should know what they do best. Some students want to start with an essay because they have it in their mind, they want to get it down and go back to the multiple choice. Some might like to start with multiple choice because it helps them with the essay. That's up to them, but it's just something that to kind of ease their anxiety when they're going into about how they can kind of accomplish the test. Another thing is, what do they do if they get stuck? Especially freshmen have there's a lot of anxiety going into the test anyway, so what do you do if you get to a problem that you don't know? This test is worth 20% of my grade, I need to get this problem right. If I don't get it, then I fail. Okay, calm yourself. If you don't know it, circle it or make some type of mark so you can go back to that problem. It might seem like common sense to us when we think about it, but if these are their first finals, they might need a little bit of a reminder that if they struggle with the problem, it's okay. You can go back to it and then start using the process of elimination to help if it's a multiple choice problem. If it's a short answer or essay, just get down what they know. And so that's the next part about different test formats. And I think that's why it's beneficial when your child is able to jot down what type of test format they'll be having, because they know how to study then. If they know that they're going to have an essay test, and their teacher has given them a little bit of detail about what those essays will entail. Oftentimes teachers will say, complete 3 of the 5 prompts for these essays. You can choose which ones. That way your student knows, okay, I know that for these essays, I need to have some details that I need to put in there to prove that I know what I'm talking about. So I might need to know years. I might need to know specific people. So when they're studying, they can know that they might have to have note cards to help themselves in remembering some of those key vocabulary, key dates, or quizzing each other for those specific items. Multiple choice, it really depends on what that subject area is. If it's a math test that has multiple choice, that doesn't just mean that they can just circle the answer. Obviously, they're still going to have to work out the problem to get the answer. So we're encouraging students that if there is multiple choice, that you should know the answer going into it, that instead of relying upon those multiple choice answers, that you should really go based upon what you know, and that way you might not get held up by what some of those other options are. So if we have 4 choices for multiple choice, you might know the answer, but now you see 3 other answers and you're second guessing yourself. So it's ensuring that our students know that you should really go based upon what you know, and if you are stuck for multiple choice, that you can do kind of that process of elimination for those problems. One of the kind of points of taking the fear out of finals was, how do you balance life right now? How do students have a balance of what they're doing? And so I saw this quote, and I thought it was kind of fitting that we have a Dr. Seuss quote, that they are still our children, they are teenagers, but they are kind of still young at heart. So, and remember that life's a great balancing act, and you will succeed. Yes, you will indeed. 98 3/4% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. So I just think it's important that for our students that they know that this is not the end of the world, that this is something that they're going to be able to do well in, and that I think they do need a little bit of motivation. And so that's where do you come in, right? You're always there. But, how can you support them during this time? I think the important thing, number one, is just to ask them about their finals. I know they don't want to talk to you. Maybe you have a student who does talk to you all the time. But asking them about their finals, they might have a structure already that they're using. You know your student, you know your child. You know if they are organized enough. You might have a student who already has a planner and they have it all planned out already. Or you might have the child where they need a little bit more help. And so that calendar that you have might be something that they might need. They might need an organizational tool. Our students who are in LAP and some of our support classes, they will receive a calendar like this, so they will be working with their teachers to develop this. But this is an option that you might provide to your child if you think that it's something that's good for them. So asking them about their final schedule, the format, and even their study plan. And depending again upon who your student or child is, you might want to review their study plans. You might want to help them complete it. They might not want you to help, but I think having that conversation about, okay, how are you going to accomplish this? In addition to studying, they have other things that are going on. So the next point of managing other responsibilities, you might have a student who is an athlete or in a club or does music or art. So they might have other things that are going on outside of finals. They have life going on. You might have chores for them to do. There might be things that they have to do in the house or other areas. So I do think it's important that when they're developing their plan, that they're realizing that there are other things that they have to build in. That's why, I kind of laugh about the fact that you have to build in dinner. But I hear it time and time again from students, well, I didn't have dinner, I forgot, or I couldn't fit it in. And we don't want that to happen. They need to eat, they need to have some of those times to have free periods and whatnot. So kind of helping them to manage that. And sometimes we do have to say no. Sometimes we do have to say, no, you're not going to go to A, B, and C, or maybe you can't go to practice depending upon how you're doing in classes. So it's having those conversations about what that looks like. I say fit in fun because it is necessary. Our students do have to have some type of time that they can calm down and relax. It may be a stressful time for your child, and they might have a little bit of anxiety. They might start feeling depressed. They might not have had this feeling before because they feel like this is such a big part of their grade. So I do think it's important that we can kind of motivate, encourage, fit in some fun, whether that be during the school week or on the weekends, just so they know that they are still just 14, 15 years old, and that they should be able to have some time that they can kind of relax and have some fun. The next part is just checking on their progress. Again, depending upon your child, they might be right there studying with you every single day so you know how they're doing. Or they might come home and lock themselves in their bedroom. So I think it's important to kind of check on that progress. It might be a daily check-in, it might be every other day. I do think it's important to kind of have that conversation because there could be that kind of backlash of just stop bothering me, stop asking me. So if you have that conversation up front, like, yeah, I'm going to check in on you throughout this progress. I want to make sure you're doing okay. Those are important things, I think, to kind of talk to your student about during that time. And then just that motivation and support. I think going back to that Dr. Seuss quote, you're going to do fine. This is not the end of the world. I want you to do well, and you do need to take it seriously. However, if it doesn't work out, this too shall pass. We'll go to the next semester and we'll work from there. And we're going to provide you with that support. Maybe we're going to take away your chores for the week. Or, maybe we are going to, we'll have an ice cream dinner tonight. Fitting in a little bit of that fun and motivation is always helpful for students. And I put the last one in here because sometimes they do need a reminder that they need to eat, they need to sleep, they need to relax, and that we're kind of building that foundation now because they're going to take finals next semester, their sophomore year, their junior year, their senior year. And there isn't as much kind of preparation when they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors because we kind of assume, oh, you have it down. But that's why we want that good foundation to start them off, to make sure that they know how to do this. We're going to provide support their sophomore, junior, and senior year, but we do want to make sure that they have a good experience or understand how to study and do well during their first experience with finals, because we don't want second semester to come and that dread to overtake them. So hopefully that will help them. So an important part from our counseling department especially, and this is recommendations that they're providing, is how you can help address student anxiety and stress. So kind of like the first picture, this might be a picture that you see or an image that you see of your student, depending upon where they're at with some of their classes and how they're feeling. And so the biggest recommendation is that you respond with patience. You might think that they're overreacting. You might think that again, it's not the end of the world, but we have to act calmly and patiently and ask them what's going on. So we're going to talk to them about what's happening, recognize their feelings, and help them develop a plan. Sometimes it's just that feeling of being overwhelmed. A lot of our students, they don't want to ask for help from us. They want to show that they have it down. I'm 14, 15 years old. I know how to do this. But we know that's not the case. So helping them to kind of figure out what's going on, helping them to kind of, determine how they're going to get through it. And reassuring them, once again, that you're going to do great. And even if you don't ace the test, that's okay. If you get a B or a C, even if you get a D or fail, we obviously don't want that, but even if that does happen, they're freshmen. There's time to do better in the future. They can do better second semester, they can prove themselves. And I think that a big thing that I hear from students is that they don't want to fail for you, they don't want to fail for their teachers, and they don't want to let them down, they don't want to let you down. So to say, I'm gonna still love you, even if you don't do well. You know, this is a key point for you in your life, but it's gonna be okay. You know, you're gonna do okay, and we're gonna move on from this. And one of the points that our counselors wanted to say is that sometimes our students are going to take to their cell phones right after a test. I bombed the test. It was horrible. Can I talk to you? I need to talk to you. So our counselors are recommending that to kind of hold off on any type of negative conversation or whatever the case is. To wait to have the conversation until after the school day, or if there is any type of conversation that is just a very positive during the day, so they don't have that anxiety going to the next test. Because there might be a little bit of that after a test. I'm sure that you've heard it throughout the semester. Oh, I failed that test completely. And maybe they come back and they did really well. And so it really just depends on the situation. Until you know more about it, you can have kind of sit-down conversation with them. Some resources, kind of going back to what I was saying before, is that the school has numerous resources for the students. So again, going back to that kind of organizational chart, students can use their notes. Many of the teachers have their class websites where they have lecture notes, other information from the units that they've done. They can talk to their peers, talking with their teachers or a counselor. Sometimes a counselor might be beneficial for even time management or organization. If they don't want to talk to you, well, maybe go see the counselor to talk about some of those things. And if they haven't met with their counselor, they should have, but if they haven't met with them yet, great time to introduce themselves. They're very friendly people. Again, the ARC, so they can go for tutoring and get specific information for their classes. And advisory is a great resource. Like I said, our students are already starting to have conversations and even studying for finals in their advisory periods. The senior teachers in those classes are talking to the students about their own experiences. The advisory teachers are also giving information. Many of the teachers, I would ask your child, has your advisory teacher given you anything? I know a lot of the teachers have given test-taking packets to their students about test-taking strategies, very similar to the information that was provided to you. So they are getting a lot of great resources in those periods, so hopefully it's starting to ease some of their concerns. Even in homeroom periods, there's been a lot of great conversation about what students should expect, any kind of lingering questions that they might have. And then 2 online sources I just wanted to provide that some of our department chairs have recommended. The first one is studystack.com, and this is a site where students can make flashcards, and it will test them randomly on flashcards that they do and do not know. So it's something that if your child likes flashcards, they might want to use an online source. And the next one, studyguides.net, is a website for students that they can go to, and it literally has study guides for different subject areas. There was a lot of information on this site, so when I went to it at first, I was a little bit overwhelmed, but our students, they're used to that. So I found that if you just scroll down to the bottom of the first page, there was many different study guides for the students. So, I know that's a lot of information, but questions, yes?
How long does it take them to get their grades back?
So the grades should be, it is a week turnaround for the grades, so the grades should be the next week. It depends on the teacher when they'll actually put in those grades though.
So the students just kind of wait?
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. Okay. So ideally, the teacher would have it done by the end of the week, because then, depending upon if they have a semester or a year-long class, that they would be able to come back and go over that test with the students. But the grades aren't actually due until the following week.
So they just check like they would for any other assignment? Okay.
For world language, For the ARC, I don't know if they have world language tutors or if there are certain teachers that do it, if there's like a schedule, or if simply the student will just need to speak to their teacher. I wasn't sure how, you know, if someone wanted to beef up their world language skills.
Correct. So yes, the ARC does not have a specific person that's set for world language. Sometimes our teachers will go to the ARC just after school to help with certain things. So my recommendation is for students just to ask their teachers about tutoring support, whether it be their own individual teacher or other teachers who are providing that help, whether it's in the ARC or the library or the classroom.
The timing of the teachers telling the students what the test is, that's going on now, because like any teenage boy, when I asked him, he said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So can I say you should know this week?
Yes, they should know by the end of this week what all of their tasks or the lack thereof that they're having for their schedules. So absolutely, we should know.
So by like tomorrow when I ask my daughter, because I'm getting the same thing. Like, I'm like, have your teachers talked to you about finals? No.
Yeah, yeah, so by tomorrow, end of the day, absolutely they should know.
Okay, and will teachers kind of give them a guide in terms of, say, you know, whether it's review everything or?
Absolutely.
You know.
Especially for our freshman teachers, they are definitely more, provide more information than other classes in regards to how students should study, what they should be looking for, kind of the format of the test, and what they should be expecting for it. So yes, they should know that.
And I don't know if this just depends on the teacher. You know, they've been taking a test in a class. Are the finals generally similar to what they've been taking, or is it something completely different? Or
Usually they're similar, but again, it kind of depends on what the subject area is and what they're expecting. So they're usually what they are familiar with doing already. And if for some reason that is not, then the teacher would explain what that looks like and why it's a little bit different than what they're doing. But it should be familiar to them. Yeah.
Are they departmental, or is it like
So
everybody
it
who
depends.
takes?
At this point, it does depend. So math is getting close, is probably the closest to having common final exams. Other subject areas, they'll have targets that they are going to meet, but they're not exactly the same test. So at this point, it is kind of all over the place. We're working on developing a structure that would ensure that they would be common, but there are a lot of different kind of reasons for that at this point with different types of grading. Again, some teachers are giving finals, some are not, some give projects versus finals. So we'll be working on, we may potentially have a different structure for semester 2 or for next year, but at this point it just varies per department and class.
And this is just, I don't know, but for English, for example, you know, they all take the same level of English, but they're all taught by different people. I mean, are they all reading the same books in the same English? It's all different.
Not all the same.
Okay, so it's all different.
Some are on
Okay, okay.
So at this point, no. And again, some teachers will be giving a test, some will not. And so it really is based upon the teacher for those classes.
So with respect to English, my son said that he's going to be having an in-class essay, and that the teacher specifically said, there's nothing to do, you cannot prepare for this. Which, you know, kind of sounds like it serves his interest, so I was curious as to whether that could possibly be the message that the teacher gave.
I'm going to say that nothing is ever not possible. So I would suggest that your student ask in regards to what that entails. Is it based upon what we have already studied, or it could be just a separate prompt that they have to pull, that they're going to.
Right. He said he's going to be given a bunch of work and write an essay. It's all new, nothing they've ever seen before, to see if you develop your skills. Okay, let me find
So there, and based upon my 6 months at Deerfield and seeing some of the English classes, it is largely based upon, obviously, the reading and writing portion of it. So I would believe that the writing portion of it is what they're assessing in this point, and making sure that they can make an argument. And so I think that's why looking even at the essays, that portion of kind of the test taking tips is nice for students. They know how to do it already, and so I'm hoping that's what was being conveyed is, you know how to do this.
Right.
You don't have to prepare because you do know how to do this. And so there isn't preparation because we're simply seeing where you're at. I could definitely see that, especially for standards-based grading, because it's not based upon cramming for a test. It's really just applying what you do know. So I'd be interested in how it was conveyed. But yeah, going back to the essays, does the question ask you to summarize, outline, refute, compare, state, trace, describe, criticize, or contrast? And then being able to kind of outline what you're going to write, writing, complete sentences, writing them in paragraphs, and just getting, your message out there about, based upon that, based upon what the verbs that are being used, whether it's summarize or compare or contrast. So I think that's largely when we're using essays, what that looks like.
Well, the students know how to pace themselves, so, I haven't taken a final since the early 80s, I don't know. So if you have multiple essays, they watch, they know, okay, if I'm spending 25 minutes writing this essay, oh, I only have 10 minutes left for 10 minutes left for the other 2 that are left, will they know how to pace themselves, knowing just,
So I think that's a really good point, and I would say for some students, yes, and some students, no. And it really depends on, what that test format looks like. So hopefully it is going to be a format that they've used before, so they have been over the semester learning how they can actually pace themselves. But I do think it's an important conversation about, how that you can pace yourself, and that's why things like not spending too much time on a specific question. That's why you look at the entire test up front and say, okay, I know that I have to accomplish all of this. I do have an essay, and that's probably going to take me a half an hour. So I do need to set aside that amount of time so I can get that done. So I do think that planning it out is important, and the majority of our teachers are going to be stressing that to our students about, okay, you have a half an hour left. You should be now on page 3, or you should be starting the essay now. So it's very similar to, and unfortunately our students are very familiar with standardized testing. So it's very similar to how standardized testing is set up, in that they know that, okay, now we must move on to the next part and be able to do that. So it really is kind of a practice. And again, you know your child or your student, and that be a conversation about making sure that, okay, you use your phone as your watch typically. So you might need a watch, or do you know where the clock is in your room? And those are important conversations to have, and those are often things that we go over with students when kind of testing time comes. But hopefully, because they've taken tests or they've had these types of assessments in their classes already, that it's already been established.
Pick up and drop off, if we decide to drive instead of buses, in the back of the school?
Yes.
The circle will be closed?
Yes. Yeah, because of the buses coming in and out throughout the entire day. That's why. Yeah. But that's a great question.
If you drive the kids instead of take the bus, usually I pick up my daughter in the front circle.
Oh, the back
But
is
because
open.
like
Normal though, right? Okay. All right. Thank you. Great, all your students are going to get A's. And on camera. So thank you so much for coming. If you do have any extra questions, or your student needs somebody to talk to, I've been telling students where my office is. They can come in, say good, bad, and ugly, and their teachers and counselors are great resources.